Hey everybody, welcome to another video. In this section, we are going to be talking about the books. So let's go ahead and pull up the concept over here. So when I was looking at this, I did grab some reference that I showed earlier of just some old-timey books, something that maybe would belong here. Now, when I look at something like this, I see a lot of little details that we probably don't want to include in the actual sculpt just because it's a little too noisy, and it's obviously this is a realistic book and we only want the implied idea of the book, which means we only want small markings that indicate some of these more intricate detail up here. I do like that Maeve kind of has like these little square notches in here and just some smaller details around the book. So what I think I can do is I'm going to sculpt maybe 3 books or so, and then when I unwrap them, I can just duplicate them and basically give them their own colors. So let's go ahead and start this. So typically what I would do is if these were going to be their own one-off assets instead of sculpted, right into the side here, I would probably end up taking these and creating their own groups and probably putting them in the center and getting them ready to sculpt that way. But in this case, I think it's totally going to be okay to just go ahead and model them and just leave them where they are and really not worry about them too much. So here is the original block out. You can see it's just a bunch of squares. You've been staring at this for a while, so let's go ahead and take a couple of these. I'm going to go ahead and start with this one, and I'm just going to go ahead and start to define this a little bit more and give this a little bit more shape to it. So I'm not going to go, overly detailed and nothing too over the top with these, because these books, like everything else, every little tiny detail, it just sort of adds up as a whole. So nothing, in my opinion, really stands out too much on its own. Give this a little bit of thickness here. And I might go thicker than what I see in the concept, just because stylized assets tend to be a little bit thicker than you might think. Possibly something like this right here. Yeah, I don't mind this. Let's see what that looks like in context with everything else. I think what we might be able to do, if it still lets us, let's go ahead and take our bevel and let's go ahead and maybe tighten that up just a bit more. Something kind of like that. I don't mind that. Yeah, honestly, I think this might be as far as I would take a book like this. I'm just kind of glancing over at my reference here, seeing if there's anything else that I would want to add. Now, if any of these books were going to be, let's say, taken out like this and like laid down somewhere, I would definitely want to get some sort of detailing on the front. But since we're not doing that, not a big deal. But yeah, I think, honestly, this is probably going to be good enough for us. Now, as far as the pages are concerned, I'm probably just going to be doing more of an implied detail that there's pages, and you'll see more what I'm talking about when we get into the sculpt. But I'm going to go ahead and close up some of these. There we go. Now, as always, because we have a curve right here that we want to try to protect, let's go ahead and add some supporting edge loops here. Now, this isn't necessarily like the most proper way to do something like this, meaning if I was going to actually be doing some like actual hard surface modeling or modeling to smooth, I would be taking a lot more care about how I'm actually going about modeling, but that's okay because, again, everything is going to be dynameshed. So I really don't care too much about the topology as long as it works inside ZBrush. Let's give that a quick smooth. Now, honestly, I think this pretty much is exactly what we're looking for. That way I can go ahead and smooth this, and it's going to look just fine inside of ZBrush. So even just by looking at the reference here, even at like looking at these books, the only thing that's really different about these two, as far as their most simplistic shape, is that this one is just a little bit thinner. This black book here is a little thinner. These two books look almost identical except for their color. Now in these, we can see that we probably have, let's see, this book here and this one here, probably the exact same shape, just a little bit fewer details or different details. These two you could call the same, maybe a little thinner. So when you have stuff like this, try not to reinvent the wheel multiple times, because what I can do is just basically duplicate this. Go ahead and tilt it. And I'm going to make it a little bit thinner, try to match that. And then let's go ahead and grab some of these verts, and we'll go ahead and just kind of move it up and see if we can match this book right here. Kind of like that. Just like that. That way I don't have to remodel this over and over again. So now let's go ahead. We can actually delete this block out here. And then I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this book over here. Maybe squash it down a little bit. And perhaps we could maybe do a fourth book, because it's really not that big of a deal. I will end up putting these on their own texture sheet just for the sake of keeping it easy for myself. Something close to this right here. We don't need to do all the books. I'm not going to do, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate books. Not really too concerned about that, so I think this should be fine for our sake. What I might do is I'm actually going to rotate this one back. That way it makes it easier for me to actually sculpt. Same with this one. Go ahead and rotate this so it's 90 degrees. So we have our 4 books that we're going to do. We can just duplicate a couple of them and change their color later. So let's go ahead and we'll take our books. And to make it simple, we can just go ahead and actually we don't need to combine them now. We can go ahead and just export these as FBXs. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and head back into ZBrush. All right, now that we are back in ZBrush, let's go ahead and we can go ahead and delete these books since we don't actually need them anymore. Okay, now we can import the books that we just made. Okay, now that we have these, let's go ahead and go to your subtool section, go to merge visible. And at the top here, we'll see that we have all of these now merged. That's great. Let's go back to our case right here, a little chest, and we'll go to append, and we'll append our books. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and take these books now, kind of isolate them, and let's go ahead and give them a few subdivisions, and then let's go ahead and we notice that all of these are in their own poly groups, which is good. That's what we want. Okay, so let's go ahead and give them some Dynamesh resolution and just see how this works. So again, like we've done in the past, oops, I didn't have groups turned on. But again, in the past, what we want to do is make sure that we basically keep the same level of detail as we Dynamesh. So you saw the last time when we Dynameshed, it kind of started to fall apart and those edges started to become a little bit pixelated, which we don't want. So just enough to give us that resolution. And then we can always add another subdivision. So I think this is going to be just fine for these books. Okay, so to make it easy on ourselves, let's go ahead and actually let's go ahead and take this book here and let's go ahead and bring this one up just a little bit. It seems like it might have gotten stretched down. Not a problem. So let's go ahead and let's split these apart. We can do that by just going to our group splits. Awesome. So now these are their each own subtool. So now we can work on them individually. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and just choose. We'll start with the book. We can start from left and just go from left to right. There's not a whole bunch that I want to do to the surface edges because I want to keep these fairly clean. I think every once in a while we can go through and just sort of ding a few edges. So just by taking the trim dynamic brush, we can just kind of go in similar to what we did with the leather. If you imagine that these are leather bound books. Now we don't want to go too hard into the detail because it might be a little bit too distracting. Again, you know, it's important to realize that we don't have to sculpt every single thing that we see. Maybe we can take some H polish, just polish this out. That's not bad. I kind of like that. And then maybe we can take the orb clay tubes and we can just go in and maybe we can make some little dings every once in a while. Just to add that, again, that implied detail to our assets. And again, it's probably not too crucial to do anything to the sides here because we're probably never going to see that. Maybe on some of them that are kind of leaning over, but for the most part, you probably just won't see the sides. So I'm starting to like this a little bit. I think even doing something like this, it just kind of adds to that sort of whimsical feel. All right, so let's begin to add some cool little details on here. So one thing that we could do is we could either turn our symmetry on and then make sure if you come over here, this little L sim, that stands for local symmetry. And that means that though that this asset is not sitting in the 0, 0 space, like the rest of the chest. So this is just basically saying that it's going to set the symmetry right in the middle of the current object that you're working on. So it's really, really handy for that. So you could either kind of take your clay buildup brush and make some cool little, you know, little notches here. I mean, we should probably turn that down just a little bit. So you could do something like this if you really wanted to, but again, we're kind of wanting to make marks that look like they're just kind of flawless and pretty simple. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and let's just mask out a little section, something like this. And let's go ahead and we'll do an extract with our geometry. Obviously that came out a little bit too big, so let's go ahead and maybe turn the thickness down quite a bit. Again, probably just a little bit too much. I think I actually accepted that one. So actually what we'll do is let's go ahead and delete that, go back to our book here, and let's go ahead and try this one more time. We'll hit extract. I think this probably should work because we can always go back and make it smaller. So we'll go ahead and accept that. We'll clear the mask. And let's go ahead and perhaps we should dynamesh this down just a little bit. Or even better, before we dynamesh, let's go ahead and we'll make this a group visible so it doesn't have multiple polygroups. Then we're going to go under our geometry tab to Z remesh. And let's just go ahead and hit, I won't touch any settings. I'm just going to hit Z remesher and see what that does. So you can see that actually ended up making this perfectly symmetrical, which is really nice. I'm glad it did that. And I think that should work for our purposes. So now what we can do is we can just go ahead and just kind of smooth this out a little bit. And we'll grab our move brush and we'll kind of just start to push this into the book just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take another look at my reference here. So it looks like these ends, they really just go right up to the edge here, because this is basically what we're trying to do right here, is these little kind of like notches. I'm not really sure what the actual term for those are, but it should work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do a clip or a clip curve, and that'll just kind of cut this right where we need it to. And then we can also just sort of come in here and we can clip this just like that, and we'll clip it at the bottom here too. So now it's nice and straight. And then let's go ahead and give it another Z-remesh just for fun to kind of clean that all up. And you can see that's pretty nice. It's pretty even topology, I'd say. All right, so that is looking pretty good here. Just looking at the concept again. And so it looks like what we'll do for a book like this is we'll go ahead and duplicate what we just made by hitting Control Shift and D. And then we can go ahead and I'm going to center this over the object. I'm just going to move it down a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate it, bring it down here one more time. Something kind of like this. So I think that works. I'm just going to look at the reference one more time over here. Yeah, it's not too bad. I think what we can do, just kind of look at this for a moment here. It looks like this book might be a little off, which is okay. A little off center. I'm just going to bring this back over here. Again, it doesn't have to be super perfect. All right, so now that we have that, what we can do is I'm going to duplicate this one more time and just kind of move it off to the side here. And I'm going to take this book and all of the pieces that we made. We're going to clear the mask. Let's go ahead and merge down. We're going to merge all these pieces together. Then we can solo this. Okay. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and let's take groups off and let's Dynamesh this one more time. Maybe a little bit higher resolution this time. Give it another subdivision. And then let's go ahead and just sort of smooth this in together. So now it looks like these are really integrated into one another. Before they kind of really just looked like it was literally just on top of it. So we're just going to smooth out these sides here. Maybe too much. There we go, just like that. Okay, so for the pages, something that I was thinking about doing is just kind of making some marks along the pages just to show that it does have multiple pages. We don't necessarily have to add anything in here, but I think it's probably a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of Orb's brushes. It's the Orb/Curve. So you can see what this does right away. I've used it before to do some of the wood markings, but it's going to work really, really well to do some pages for us. So we can actually just click and hold Shift, and we can draw a straight line. And you see how it's kind of coming over onto this side right here, and it's kind of lifting it up, and we don't want that. So what we can do is just go back again to our brushes, and let's go to our auto masking, and we'll do backface mask. Let's try that one more time. Something like that should do just fine. And then you can always just come back in like this and just kind of smooth some of this out. There we go. And then we can take that same brush and we'll just continue this line all the way down, holding Shift. Again, this side probably won't be that important to show because, again, the book is going to be facing the other way. so it's not that big of a deal. So let's go ahead and just do that one more time here. And maybe we could do it just once more. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this though first. Just using the trim smooth border, just kind of going in and smoothing it a little bit. So this, the reason I'm doing this is because it's just showing that there are pages here without actually having to go in and, trying to create a bunch of different pages in a weird way. I think this is just a nice way to show that there's pages in here, because it's just going to barely catch your eye, and that's all we want. So I think if I had to stress something to you all, I would say, the biggest thing is that stylized, it's just implied detail. I've said it before, so just keep that in mind. Let's see, maybe we could do one more, maybe. I think 3 is probably good. I don't mind having one that's like this because it's kind of a little bit more faint. It's not that big, so we'll just sort of go with that kind of faint line, just like that. Just kind of clean up this area right here. But yeah, I think that this is probably good. If you wanted to add in some extra detail, you totally could. There's some little like markings here and there that are pretty cool, but I don't think it's 100% necessary. I might do, again, with our little alpha trick in Photoshop, I might just paint something really quickly. Exactly like right here too, right? I might just paint something really quick just to get that. And then we'll have 2 books that have some, interesting markings, because it is kind of cool. It kind of ties in with the rest. You see some other sort of markings on these pages here. So I think that would be a good idea to include at least some of that. So we went ahead and we duplicated this back piece, which was a really good idea. So let's go ahead and just slide this over. I'm going to do this book really quick because I'm going to work on that sort of green looking book, get that one all nice and wrapped up. So I'm just going to go ahead and place this here, make another one above it, call that good. And then in the concept, it's sort of more of like a squarish shape. So in order to achieve something like that, we can just simply click and drag a mask, something kind of like this. And then I'm going to do the inverse by holding Control Alt. And I'm just going to do something, maybe something a little bit like this here. Doesn't have to be perfect by any means. And then let's just do the same thing. We'll go to our extract and let's go ahead and pull this out. So we'll do a little bit lower of a number again. I think that'll work just fine. We'll accept it. You'll notice that it actually went through the opposite side, which is not a big deal at all. We're just going to hold Control Shift and Alt, and we're going to click on the piece we want to save, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and click Control Shift and Alt again and drag on the canvas. Actually, let's do this. First, what we're going to do, let's make this pretty easy on ourselves. There's obviously multiple poly groups here, so let's just go ahead and we'll do a auto groups. Now what we can do is hold Control Shift and Alt. We'll click on the one that we want to keep, which is this. Then we can go ahead and go to our delete hidden. And then I'll just go ahead and get rid of that for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn our symmetry on. We're going to go to our geometry tab one more time, and let's go ahead and hit Z-Remesh. Now, if you don't have your symmetry turned on and you hit Z-Remesh, it's not going to make it perfectly symmetrical. So just by having the symmetry turned on, that will make the subtool symmetrical. The more you know. All right, so maybe what we can do is, now that we have this, let's just kind of smooth this out a little bit. And let's go ahead and we'll move this into the book a little bit more. All right, perfect. I think I'm okay with that. Looks pretty cool. Just some cool little detail. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and merge those together. I think what we want to do though before that is let's duplicate this one more time, and we'll go ahead and scooch it right on over here. All right, so we'll grab all of those subtools. let's go ahead and merge down. All right, so we're just gonna do another rinse and repeat. So we're gonna take all of these and we're gonna do a group visible. And let's go ahead and once again turn groups off, Dynamesh at a pretty high resolution, and give it one more subdiv. And then let's just go ahead and we'll smooth this again. Smooth it right on in. That way it just kind of looks like it's connected to the actual book. And let's not forget what we want to do is we want to go through, just sort of give it a little bit of edge wear. Again, doesn't need to be anything over the top. Just a little sculpting will do. There we go. And then once again, let's go ahead and just take the H polish brush and we'll just kind of continue to refine and smooth out those shapes. Then we can now also just add in a little bit of that kind of detail, similar to like what we did with the metal, but just a little subtle kind of pushing in with the H polish brush, just to give it a little bit of interesting detail kind of in here. All right, that looks pretty cool. Once again, let's go ahead and actually take these pages and let's go ahead and put those in. And once more, just cleaning this up with the Trim Smooth Border brush. All right, so that is our second book done. So you can see, I mean, this should go fairly quickly. This is a process that, you know, obviously can take as little or as long as you want, just depending on how complicated you want this. But, you know, we want to match the level of detail of everything else that we have. So we don't want to do anything that has like a lot of detail. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and make a couple of alphas. Maybe I'll do one just like this, and then I'll do another one that's got these really cool symbols on them. It'd be actually pretty cool to make these. Maybe we can make them glow a little bit in the end. We'll see if we could do that. All right, so with Photoshop open, let's go ahead and make a new file. Again, let's keep this simple, 1000 by 1000. Now I'm just gonna, again, just kind of go through and just kind of make some marks that maybe they look cool, right? Maybe that some of these just like look kind of cool. It's not going to be anything anything that Maeve has necessarily done. I'm just kind of making something that it looks like she might have tried to do. Okay, same thing as before. We're just going to go ahead and do an inner glow with all these settings here, and then we're just going to choose our size, and we're going to bring the size down just a little bit. Something maybe like this, and we're just going to save that out as book symbol 01. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the next one. Let's do something like this. Might take me a couple tries and get that shape down. All right, so I'm just kind of make one of those little filigree kind of flower things. Does not need to be perfect. If I was doing this for a client or for work, I would definitely spend a little bit more time really just kind of making this shape just, you know, as perfect as I could. But I think in this case, you guys will be able to understand this sort of method, and that's really what I'm trying to do. Just kind of teach you some really fast ways of working, maybe showing you some new techniques. So, all right, so I think that's as much as I'm going to go ahead and finesse this one. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Go ahead and put an inner glow on it. Let's make the size a little bit bigger. And we'll save this out as book symbol 02. All right, so let's head back into ZBrush. Now you all pretty much know the drill at this point. Before I actually go ahead and import some of those alphas, let's go ahead and let's get this set up really quick here. I'm gonna go ahead and hide these ropes because they seem to be blocking my view right now. All right, so let's go ahead and just get this positioned where we want it. So it looks like, again, we have 2 at the bottom and we've got 2 at the top. Very cool, something like that, that works. Okay, so I'm not actually going to add these anymore to this book. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep that one pretty simple. But so we don't have to actually go ahead and duplicate this again. And same thing again. Let's go ahead and remove groups. I'm going to group visible. And let's go ahead and give this some good res and Dynamesh. All right, so I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and I'm going to select my clay brush and I'm going to go to alpha. Let's go ahead and go to import and let's go ahead and grab our book symbol 02. Let's go to alpha, take our mid value to 100, and let's go ahead and see if we can match this pretty closely to what we have in the concept. Yeah, I don't mind that. I think what we can kind of do is smooth this out just a little bit if we wanted to. And let's take our H polish or even maybe our trim dynamic brush and we can kind of come in here and just sort of like add a little bit of damage, maybe some, just a little bit of texture to these actual little leaf surfaces here. What this will do is just kind of help to emphasize that it's a part of the book. Maybe they're worn a little bit. Because again, if you're thinking about this in the context of, the concept being shown from this distance, that still reads really, really well. So even if it doesn't read super up close, like super well and sharp, I mean, it should, but what you should be concerned about is what it looks like from this distance. So you want everything looking, pretty crisp and clear reads. So I'm going to go ahead and once again with this book, I'm going to add the pages or the implied pages. All right, looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and conclude with our last book. Okay, so again, let's go ahead and add a little bit of edge wear just so we can stay pretty consistent. Okay, so once again, We're going to go ahead and select our clay brush, select our alpha. Let's go ahead and import that last alpha, book symbol 01. All right, so let's go ahead and try to put this on there, but first we'll change the mid value to 100. And let's go ahead and make sure that we select our brush and change the back face masking to on, and we'll give that another go here. It's not working exactly the way that I wish that it would be, and that's totally fine, because what that does is give me another opportunity to share another way to do this. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to select a random brush, and let's go ahead and make sure that we have our handy dandy masking pen. So what we can do is we're going to do this. We're going to hit Control D, give it another subdivision. And I'm just going to look at the reference here, and I'm just going to kind of try to quickly mimic it yet again. Just, make it something kind of cool. So in hindsight, this was a better idea, because having an alpha and trying to make it go on such a thin line, I thought that that might be an issue before, but you got to try it. You just got to see what works, what doesn't work. It's all part of experimenting, and it's how you get better and figuring out, different methods of working. So once we have this, we can actually hit Control and Alt, and we can tap continuously on the mesh. And what that'll do is it's going to crispen up the mask itself. And once we've done that, we can go ahead and I'm going to hit Control, and I'm just going to click once to invert the mask. We can go to our deformation tab, and we can just go to inflate, and we can just go ahead and inflate that. And let's go ahead and just do that just enough so it's going into the book a little bit, something like this. And then let's come through here, and we'll just kind of smooth this out. So I don't know about you, I think this looks pretty cool. Very rune-like, very magical. Okay, so let's see what it looks like in the context of the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I think that's really going to work well. It's got the same kind of level of fidelity as this big carving on the wood here. So let's finish this up by, of course, adding our pages. All right, so there you have it. We have 4 pretty unique looking book sculpts, and I think that they turned out really well, considering that, we did this fairly quickly, to be honest. So you can even see from a distance, you see how you can just pick up the pages? Like, it looks like there's several different pages, but it's just a few lines. So this is how I would approach tackling a book like this. If I were to do it the other way, I would probably end up just zeroing it out in the 0, 0 space, and I could work on it then. But this project just doesn't really require us to do a whole lot of sort of maneuvering of the assets. We can just really keep them where they are in their space, and that's just going to save us a lot of time in the long run, because then we don't have to move anything back. So I hope that you all enjoyed this part of the video. I hope that you learned something, and I will see you in the next video.